and we're underway and racing. Stay on the brakes, goodness me, what a launch! The outside of turn 1 and takes the lead of the race.
Ladies and gentlemen, for one final time here on F1 24, we have racing action, and we are here in the Almost Pro Championship with just that tonight. Welcome along to round 14 of 14 of this evening, and or round 14 of 14 of season number 8. We're here in Abu Dhabi for the last dance, one last dance here on F1 24, and in season 8 in general. We have a champion crowned in both the drivers and constructors, but it's still all yet to play for. Alongside me this evening is going to be Owen Boldero. Of course, my name is Joseph Black, and we are here to take you through a 29-lap dance around Abu Dhabi, after which we can finally say goodbye to F1 24 for one final time. Good evening, Owen. Welcome along to the comms box, and welcome along to APC for the final time in Season 8 and the final time for a few months as well. How are we?
Well, I'm doing great, Joseph. Thank you very much. And here's the last race of the season here at Abu Dhabi. A classic for a season finale, really. It's been the season finale now since 2014, and it has produced some great moments, of course. It produced that iconic but very controversial moment in real life in 2021, and it produced a pretty good race last season as well, if I remember correctly. So I'm very excited to see the racing that goes on, and well, in terms of strategy, we're not going to be seeing a very interesting battle because it's medium hard or hard medium. It's a very, very simple one. But last race of F1 24, thank God. Let's make it a good one.
Well, yes, exactly. And well, I mean, Abu Dhabi 2021, of course, infamous for the Yuki Tsunoda P4 in that race, his personal best in Formula One, and
course, yeah.
Potentially his personal best of all time, unless he can wrangle that Red Bull into a podium position, which it is fully capable of, as shown by Max Verstappen. But anyway, less of the rage-baited comments and more of the action. 6 drivers racing at the moment. We're expecting 9, so we're hoping 3 are going to turn up mid-session. But just to start us off with, for one final time, Daniel Riley, who claims that this is one of his best circuits, if not his best circuit, and he will be finishing off F1 24, in that case, in style, of course. 6 drivers racing. Dan Riley, one of 3 to be competing for that 3rd spot. And, well, one of those 3 is George Chapman, who is noticeably absent this evening. It's George Chapman, Brad Gibb, and, well, there's somebody else that we are still waiting for as well. It's Brian Moore, the last driver that we will be waiting for. Ethan Shackleton has signed out of this evening's action. He will not be racing. Dan Riley heading down to the braking zone for the chicane after a very, very long straight, and you'll be getting DRS all the way down it. And Dan Riley out on the exit of it. Doing pretty well just at the moment to make himself look pretty solid, at least, for a first lap time. Stuart Towers, in fact, as I was informed that the message that I received was incorrect. Stuart Towers parked up in the final sector, and Dan Riley heading through that final sector on his first push lap and the first push lap of this session. The kick Sauber, final few corners beckon for the green and the black of the kick Sauber. Of course, around the final couple of corners he is going to come, and what sort of lap time will it be? It will be pole position for the time being, but how much longer is that going to last? Up to the line, it's going to be a 1:23.5. Feels like a pretty good lap time as Stuart Tower comes around the final corner to start his lap. And, well, I believe 21 is going to be about where the pole time is. Jack Weaver around the final couple of corners. Cenk van Wey goes into 22s. 22.8 is what he set. And Jack Weaver is going to be 3rd across the line with a 23.5. So splitting the gap between Riley and Cenk van, but not that far ahead of the kick Sauber.
Yeah, in terms of pole time, I think we're going to see a 22.3 or a 22.4, something like that. I don't think we will break into the 121s, because a 121 lap time is, well, incredibly quick, I think is the best way to put it. Maybe just a little bit above what, this server can do, because 121, I believe, is roughly where esports drivers are. They're somewhere within, like, proper esports drivers, somewhere within the 121. So don't think we'll quite break into the 121s, but I think we'll see a 22-3 or a 23-4.
I think I'm just used to my experiences in esports in Abu Dhabi, because I've done many an esports race around here, and just picked up the circuit itself. I did 4 in a week once, which is my record. My second highest was Mexico, which actually included APC. I believe at some point, I think it was Mexico at least, there was one where it included APC up to the line. Stuart Towers with a 24-7 going ahead of Connor Stewart Woodard and up into P5 of 6 at the moment. Speaking of the battle for P5 and P6, well, we have a championship battle on our hands. Andrea Chenkovan up at the top, of course. He's sealed that title. Ethan Shackleton, second place. He's not racing tonight, but he will be very happy with a 1-2 for the Ferrari outfit. Kyle Stewart Woodard in third place with 156 points, and Daniel Riley will be looking to chase him down this evening. George Chapman looks set on that P3, but a poor result last time out meant that Stuart Woodard and Riley worked their way back into it, and Chapman, no showing so far, means that they may well be right back into the battle for P3, and if he doesn't join by the end of qualifying, he will be out of the battle for P3, and he'll have to settle for P5. Connor Stewart Woodard and Brian Moore separated by 10 points in 6th and 7th, so it's going to be a tough task for the Kicksale. But if he does indeed catch up to Connor Stewart Woodard, and if he does indeed join the session, well, speak of the devil, and Brian Moore has just joined the session, only about 8 minutes late into qualifying at least. He's a little bit later, all things considered. But yeah, he is into the session now. He'll be trying to challenge with Connor Stewart Woodard and trying to get an unlikely P6 off of him now. Brad Gibb down the bottom with 33 points. He is, well, if he turns up tonight, he'll be looking to beat Lucas Erasini, but a man who is, I'd say, obsessed with the F1 25 game now. I believe it'll be unlikely that the Haas will be rocking up this evening. Then, if you look at the team standings, Ferrari at the top, 476. That was sealed a very long time ago. But P2 is still up for grabs. It's 4 points between Williams and McLaren, and kicks out, but not too far off as well. If it's Dan Riley's strong circuit, as he says, and if there's no Williams of George Chapman, I think this one could be right open. But of course, it is what we'll have to go and see as we head through the session. As well, Jack Weaver is back out on the circuit and ready to set another push lap. The number 72 just heading through the first sector now. Weaving, getting himself prepared. No pun intended, of course, as ever with Jack Weaver. But yeah, he's heading through the first sector, getting ready.
Yeah, I think at Abu Dhabi, your preparation is quite important, because that first sort of sector and a half, there's not really any opportunity particularly to warm your tyres. You know, the first sector, there's only 2 proper corners, and then you've got that long straight up to turn 5, and then another up to turn 7. So there's not a lot of opportunity in the first bit of the lap to get your tyres up to temperature, so your preparation is quite important for a lap around Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, and of course on this game, it is very important for tyre wear tyre warm up to be up to temperature. Not quite as important as F1 25, but we'll get on to that conversation soon. Jack Weaver across the line to see if he can beat his 23.5. He's only just over 300s ahead of Dan Riley. I'd say he's in a pretty good position to pounce here. Of course, Haas not being very high up on the field, well, with 45 points. Only 190 behind Kik Sauber, so not too far off. But Jack Weaver, the sole Haas here tonight. He won't care about any championships. He'll just be trying to push up at the top, won't he?
Yeah, I think at this phase of the season, in this final race, it's just about finishing the season on a high, you know. Finishing on a high and then building towards next season. Of course, we have quite a big preparation phase until next season. Next season doesn't start, I believe, until sort of mid to late August. So there's quite a big prep phase for drivers to get used to the new handling of F1 25, which is very different to F124 and punishes what works in F124.
Yeah, it's well, we will see what ends up happening throughout this. We'll see what ends up happening throughout this new game cycle and throughout the next APC season that comes up. Season 9 is going to be interesting, but Season 8 has had its own share of thrills and spills. Ethan Shackleton's title battle that I would say is akin to Lando Norris's title battle of last year, where he wasn't quite quick enough to keep up with Chenkovan on a consistent basis. George Chapman having the pace to compete up at the top. He's loving F1 25 a lot more than 24. I think he could be a contender.
Yeah, 100%. He's not somebody you can write off at all. You know, he's proven it in the 6 races he's done, I believe. He's done 6 now. He's definitely not someone you can ever write off. And I mean, with pace like he has, he's always a threat in a race. Same as Andrea Chenkovan in that sense. So, with more drivers coming in for next season, I think this league is going to improve and it's going to get a lot harder to win a championship.
Of course, not ever easy to win a championship, as Andrea Chenkovan, our championship holder now, goes up even quicker, almost a whole second ahead of Jack Weaver's time, just 9/10 back. Stuart Towers is going to look to challenge, but he's a driver, Stuart Towers, who's won multiple titles here, the only driver to win multiple titles here. Could his legacy be under threat from Andrea Chenkovan if he does a few more seasons here? I think that's. I think it's a great question, just to contend with whether Andrea Chenkovan. Of course, he's won this title, being so dominant. It's going to be a whole new game. Stuart Towers has only just returned to the league, and he's going to want to uphold that legacy, quote unquote, that he has. As Dan Riley goes up to the front row, 23.2 is his lap time. He goes within 8/10 or just over 8/10 behind Andrea Chenkovan. But yes, it's an interesting one. Chenkovan versus Stuart Towers. Who's the APC GOAT? Well, it's a good debate to have. But yeah, it's. I think at the moment Stuart Towers would just hold it, but Chenkovan, with the pace that he's shown this season, he has the opportunity to challenge and to really become, if he is that quick over the next few game cycles, I think he has the potential to take as many titles, if not more, away from Stuart Towers.
Yeah, I think Andrea Chenkovan is on 2 now, and Stuart Towers, I believe, is on 3. So it's only 1 more, and he equals that record that Stuart Towers has held for so long. So can Andrea Chenkovan do it next season? Or will someone like George Chapman come in and put up a big fight and maybe even take that championship away from him?
I think George Chapman is a strong contender for that title challenge because, well, of course, he has had the pace over Chenkovan in all, but I believe one of the races where the two have competed, I guess 2, the Netherlands. So, I mean, it's not impossible that there is a championship challenge on our hands, and I think next season, if Chenkovan can hook up this game as much as George Chapman can, if he can find it as exciting as George Chapman can and really dedicate the hours to it, I think it could be pretty close. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting debate. For somebody like Connor Stewart Woodard and Brian Moore, I think they'll be looking forward to the new game cycle. I think it'll be more of a refresh opportunity to reset. Of course, Connor's watched his brother get significantly better throughout this game cycle and start to sort of challenge towards the top. Of course, he's battling for that 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship this evening. But yeah, I think he's watched his brother get better, potentially as a result of switching over to Steam, but he still denies that, while I'm still unsure. What do we think about Connor and about Brian? Do we think that they've got potential to maybe hook up F1 25? I know that it's a more enjoyable game for almost everybody involved, but I think, do you think they have the opportunity to maybe try and compete up with the best and maybe catch up with Kyle?
Well, if we're talking about the topic of Connor and Brian, I know Brian is actually feeling a little bit weird on this new game, I think is the best way to put it. I was in an Xbox party with him recently, and he was saying how weird the game feels to him. I gave him some controller settings that I've been building over the last sort of week or so, and he said they felt better, and he seems to be a little bit more comfortable now, so maybe he can challenge towards the top. I mean, his Monaco time is actually fairly solid from what I've seen, which is a positive sign, because I remember Monaco was a bit of a sticking point for him in our league, which is actually the only partnered league of APC, by the way, so I can say that. And yeah, so he can probably improve into next season. And Connor, well, I think Connor has struggled since I've come in. Connor on F1 23 and 24 has sort of struggled. Maybe it's the new sort of ground effect cars, but from what I can tell from previous sort of spreadsheets and history, all the data that I have access to, he was actually quite quick at one point. So maybe it is just the new ground effect cars and sort of the new handling direction that 23, 24 and 25 have taken, because all are fairly different to each other. I mean, 23 obviously was severe understeer, 24 was severe oversteer, and then 25 seems to be somewhere in the middle, because although when you first boot up the game it's understeer, you can sort of customize your settings to be more oversteer orientated, is what I've noticed. So the car turns a little bit sharper, and although you can't flick like on wheel like you could in F1 24, oversteer still does work for a qualifying lap. Not so much in a race, but on a qualifying lap it definitely can work.
I found this out the other day. I did a 50% race at Brazil, and while I picked up wing damage on the first lap, so I sort of had to resort to the old steering style, and I found my tyres absolutely destroyed. Hard tyres as well, absolutely destroyed by lap 10 of 33, and they were the only set of hard tyres I had. So I ended up having to do a medium, and in both stints where I went 11 laps in and then 12 laps for the final one, my tyres ended up getting to, at minimum, 65 on the fronts and 70s on the rears, and yeah, those hard tyres at the start felt absolutely horrible. They just fell off a cliff as Jack Weaver becomes the second driver into the 22s. The difference being, though, that Chenkovan has done so on 2 different lap times. Daniel Riley could be looking to be the third, as he's improved by 900ths of a second in the first 2 sectors, and could be on for our third sub 23 lap time in this evening's action. He won't have to go that far sub 23 to catch up to Jack Weaver, as Jack is only 200ths ahead, as Dan Riley just goes a little bit wide in the final sector and validates, and will not be improving upon that lap time. Stuart Tower goes up. That's a solid lap time of 23.6 into 4th place, as the checkered flag has waved. Chenkovan and Dan Riley and Stuart Tower, they've all finished their runs. Jack Weaver, I believe, as well, has backed out of his final push, so it's down to the 2 McLarens then, and the other Kick Sauber, who's just crossed the line, Brian Moore, with a 25.6, and he's just gone ahead of Connor Stewart Woodard. Connor, who looks like he may well have sacrificed his lap to allow for Kyle to get as good a lap as he can. Of course, teammates battling, and Connor not quite in the battle with Brian Moore. He's not really going to be feeling the pressure unless Brian can get 10 more points than him, but Kyle, he's feeling the pressure. Despite the fact there's still 13 points in it, Kyle is feeling the pressure a lot more than Connor is, and now around the final corner comes the 2 McLarens. Connor into the pit lane, Kyle to finish us off with a 23.3, and he goes up to 4th place, but that's a solid lap time, especially because that slipstream didn't gain him that much time. Jack Weaver and Stuart Tower will finish us off, but neither of them on competitive lap times, and that is going to be Andrea Chenkovan on that pole position once again. As we've said so many times this season, we get to say it once again for the Ferrari.
Yeah, and as I said, pole position was a 22.4. I said either a 22.3 or a 22.4, just because a 1:21 lap time, especially for quite a few people here who are on controller, is astronomically difficult to get into. A 1:21 around Abu Dhabi is an incredible lap time, so of course for someone who's used to esports level like you are, that's kind of the norm, but in lower league racing, sort of mid 22s is sort of about right.
Yeah, and Chenkovan going just under mid 22s with a 22.4 to go into first place and to take that pole position away. I think you called a 22.3, so you were pretty close to that one in the end. I think you said 22.2, 22.3, so you weren't too far off. Jack Weaver will line up alongside him on the front row with Dan Riley and Carl Stewart Woodard populating the second row of the field. Stuart Tower and Brian Moore will share the third row with Connor Stewart Woodard down the rear of this field. But yes, 7 drivers will be taking to the United Arab Emirates and to the final round of this APC season, which has seen so many different drivers and so many different scenarios. We could be set for one more around the 29 laps around the Yas Marina circuit. But hey, it's always time, I feel, for a prediction. Who's going to top this one?
It's boring, but Andrea Chenkovan, I mean, the pace he's shown this season, and he had, if I remember correctly, he had really good pace at Abu Dhabi last season, and of course, you know, he's only got faster since last season, so I think Andrea Chenkovan takes this one comfortably.
Yeah, I think that is a fair assumption, but speaking of predictions, I mean, the main headline going into this race was going to be Kyle, Dan, and George. No George. So between Kyle and Dan, who have you got?
I actually haven't taken a look at the standings. Hang on, let me...
Kyle is 13 points ahead of Dan, for reference.
Oh, I can't see... No offence to Dan, but I can't see him gaining 13 points this race. Because in order to do that, he'd have to finish first, and then Kyle will have to finish fourth, or second and sixth. I just don't see it happening today, unfortunately, for Dan Riley. He's got the pace. If there was a few more races, he probably could, but I don't think he'll do it in this last race, sadly, for him.
Yeah, I think it will be a steep task, but it wouldn't necessarily be impossible. If Dan was to take P2, which is, I think, what he's going to be aiming for now that there's no George Chapman or Brad Gibb, I think he's going to be aiming for that P2 or P3. If he's able to take that P2 and he takes 18 points home, then it may well go down to count back with Kyle and Dan. If Kyle ends up finishing 5th place or below, if my maths are correct, which I don't think they are. No, it's 18 points. No, they are correct. Hang on. I don't think they are correct anyway. We are going to go to the formation lap here in Abu Dhabi, and I'm gonna revise my maths. So, hang on. This is no worse than my Dutch maths, by the way. That was absolutely abysmal. But Kyle is 15 points ahead of Dan Riley. If Dan takes that P2, he takes 18 points away, which means he is 3 points. No, which means he is 5 points ahead, I think. Hang on, 161. Yeah, 5 points ahead. Okay. So Kyle would have to finish. No. Dan needs to win the race because there's only 7 drivers. So Dan needs to win this race in order to win the title, or he's got to hope that Kyle to win P3, or he's got to hope that Kyle DNFs, which I think is unlikely unless Kyle actually has a crash, which around Abu Dhabi, possible, but not necessarily likely.
Not necessarily. If Dan finishes second
Fastest
and
lap.
Kyle finishes last, if Kyle finishes last, I believe on countback Dan gets it on podiums. You'll have to.
I disagree.
You'll have to.
I disagree, because if Dan got 18 points and Kyle had none, then Dan would be 5 points ahead. He'll get 6 for finishing 7th. So then Kyle would take it by 1 point.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, actually, yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, fastest lap as well. Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, you were right. Yeah, P2 plus fastest lap gets him the, and Kyle finishing 7th gets him the 3rd place in the championship, and then or winning the race and Kyle finishing 4th, I believe.
All these to be decided very, very soon. The 5 lights are going to be on very soon for the final race here on F1 24. We'll take a look at F1 25 very, very soon when that comes out. And of course, APC will be there for you. But for one final time, we have one last dance here on 24. And we're underway. Chenkovan gets off to a good start. Jack Weaver tries to tuck into his slipstream. Dan Riley looks around the outside, and I think I've just disconnected from the session. Well, ladies and gents, this has been an interesting time for us, as it appears that the entirety of Steam decided to go down, not just F1 24, just for a couple of minutes. Maybe someone flicked a switch somewhere, and yeah, that was not an ideal scenario. We'll hopefully be able to get you the race action as soon as we possibly can. But for now, we're going to be able to have a chat with one of those contenders that we mentioned for that P3. With no George Chapman around tonight, it's a great opportunity for Dan Riley and Carl Stewart to pick up some points. Good evening, Dan. How are we?
Good. Obviously, before quali started, I knew Shackleton wasn't participating, so that was a free position, I guess. But I was a bit confused because George and what's the other guy's name? I can't actually remember. I think it's Brad. That's it, Brad. They aren't driving today, so it's another 2 positions gained. So realistically, the only one I was looking at is Kyle and Jack. And Jack just managed to get P2. I think we are keeping qualifying the same, so I think I will be starting P3. So yeah, so I feel like I could have got maybe P2. I did mess up my final run. I was like 2 tenths up, and I ended up invalidating my laps. So it's unfortunate, but we'll have to see what I could do into turn 1 when this restart happens.
Yes, we will see what happens into the first corner. I mean, as we saw it, it was yourself and Jack Weaver looked pretty close in terms of battling, or in qualifying at least. Do you think you'll be able to hold a candle to him in the race?
Well, I mean, I did last race, but let's be honest, last race was kind of a bit of a fluke. So we'll have to see. You kind of get like a bit of a preview on who's getting the tires. He was running the hard compound tires. I want to see if he's running them again, but I'm still going to be using the medium, so I'm not going to lie. So we'll see what tires he would do, but yeah, we'll have to see.
Yes, it'll be an interesting strategic one, especially with this restart ready to get going. Owen, have you got anything vital before we let Dan go? Because I know he wants to prepare himself for this one last dance on F1 24.
Ironically, no. You covered it.
Ah, well, that's my first one of the evening. Good one and good start.
Maybe after the race.
After the race, I'm sure we'll have plenty of
we'll
questions.
We'll see.
But until then, have fun. Good luck.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. That was a good little moment just to get him in. And well, we're going to be going to the footage once again. Do you think that's going to affect the drivers' preparations at all, the restart, or do you think they're just going to be able to hit it from minute 1 once again?
Well, I think they'll have extra info now for the race. Those that did those few racing, they have a little bit more info on sort of how the car feels, how much fuel to take, things like that. So it will help preparation, I think, not so much hinder it, because they have more information in that sense.
Yes, and I mean, they'll know exactly what everybody else was planning to do to start off with. Whether they change it, it's going to be an entirely different question, a question that will be answered within the next few minutes. We're just getting our last few minutes of strategy and setup and fuel and everything like that sorted. Of course, it's going to take a little bit longer to get the setups on, mainly because of the fact that we are very, very they were able to get them on in qualifying. We haven't had that luxury in here, so we'll have a couple of minutes before we get going to the race session, and of course get going to that highly anticipated battle between the Kyle Stewart-Woodard and Dan Riley, but it shall all be decided very, very soon. And yeah, the drivers making their final preparations, as I say, and then they'll be heading out onto the circuit for a 29 lap dash around the Yas Marina circuit. This one is going to be a great race as all the drivers look to finish off F124 in style. Not necessarily the greatest game cycle that EA has ever seen, or Codemasters as well. It's actually been a pretty big one as Codemasters is looking to potentially shut down, so this may well be one last chance for the iconic game coders as well. The formation lap is underway. Chenkovan will lead us away again. Are the tyres going to be exactly the same? Well, everybody's on the medium tyres, so in one sense of the word, yeah, they will be. They'll all be exactly the same. They're all exactly the same strategy, medium compound tyres.
Yeah, Abu Dhabi, you don't necessarily get all that much freedom with your strategy, so it's going to be medium hards for everyone with the pit window opening. Probably about as early as lap 10. I mean, hards would feel great, definitely make it. And then probably optimal stop lap is about lap 13. 12 or 13, I think, is probably your optimal stop lap. So you get the peak of the medium tyres, but then you come in just before they get about to fall off a cliff.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed about F125 in particular. Not to harp on or labour on the point at all, but F125 does seem to have a very specific window of how long the tyres are good for, and then they'll just suddenly go off. That is something that I've noticed, and I noticed that in that Brazil race, because those hards felt absolutely fine onto about lap 8. Lap 9 they were a bit slidey, and lap 10 they were absolute hell to deal with. So it's going to be an interesting one heading into 25. Those who have practiced 25, like Brian Moore in the YouTube chat, are more likely to have not done. Are more likely to have prepared themselves for shorter stints, more pit stops, as they try to spice up the strategic battles heading into F125. Speaking of Brian Moore, thank you very much for pointing out an issue that we had with the audio in the in the YouTube chat. It is all fixed, and we are now ready to go racing. The Chenkovan is going to lead us around the final corner to start us off. And Jack Weaver will be in P2. Dan Riley will be in P3, as that is in the background. Connor Stewart-Woodard going very wide out of the final corner as he tries to set himself up to get going for one final time successfully. F124, there's been ups, there's been downs. We've got 29 laps until the end. And the action's underway. Chenkovan gets off to not a great start, and he's going to come under pressure from Jack Weaver into the first corner. But Dan Riley may well go around the outside of Weaver as he just goes off the circuit for the moment. Dan might take P2 as he sweeps around the outside. He does take P2 in this first sector, and that is a very, very good move. But Jack Weaver with the exit out of the sweeping corner, and he gets past Dan. Kyle Stewart-Woodard now trying to get past his rival for P3, but Dan Riley holding firm in that third place. He wants to take that P2 back, but Dan has dropped down at the start, back to the position where he started from, but considering the start that he got, he'll be wanting to go just that little bit better. Connor Stewart-Woodard has gotten past Brian Moore at the start of this one, and Chenkovan continues to lead.
Yeah, an interesting start. Dan Riley obviously got the jump a little bit on Jack Weaver. Jack Weaver had a little bit of a snap coming off of the line towards turn 1, and that allowed Dan Riley to go around the outside. He had to give the place back though because he overtook off track, so I imagine the game probably gave him an illegal overtake, because then he dropped all the way back and came under pressure from Kyle. So not a great start for Dan Riley in that sense, more of what could have been.
Yes, it's what could have been. I mean, he led in Singapore at the start of the race, and he may well be looking to at least lead this race. That race could have cost him the championship in total, or at least that fight for P3, because Dan Riley is just, well, he went for it just so he could say that he led a race. And that immaturity, in a sense, may well have cost him. And he just sits in P3 at the moment, trying to stay within range of Jack Weaver. Weaver, by the way, has done a little bit better than he did on that first start, where you said he was 2 seconds off on lap 2. He is just in behind, and with the first burst of DRS, he's going to pull alongside the Ferrari and ahead of the Ferrari as they head out of the exit of the straight. So the DRS doing exactly what it's supposed to, and Jack Weaver up into the lead of the race.
Yeah, much better start for Jack Weaver this time compared to last time. He's taken the race lead, and Chenkovan has taken it straight back. But crucially, now that DRS is open, it's a little bit easier to stay with your rivals due to the power of DRS around here. You know, you've got 2 DRS zones in a row, which are both pretty long and pretty powerful. So, going to be an interesting race between these 3, and see how long the DRS train lasts. As I say that, he gets a 3-second penalty.
Well, that's not ideal for him, and Dan will be looking at that and rubbing his hands together with glee. And, well, he'll also be looking at the fact that Jack Weaver is almost out of the DRS of Andrew Chenkovan, and I don't know whether he'll be looking at that with glee or with horror, because then he won't be able to fight for that race lead. But, yeah, out of the DRS goes Jack Weaver, and Andrew Chenkovan is leading this one away. Dan Riley looks to pressure. Carl Stewart has lost the DRS as well, so he will not be able to pressure either. And Dan Riley down the inside, it gets past Jack Weaver up into that second place. That is exactly what the Kick Sauber would have wanted. And now, ironically, he's going to try and kick on.
Yeah, you know, in order to keep this 3rd place stream alive, he kind of needs to win this race, though that's looking a little bit difficult, as Andrea Chenkovan has already broken out of DRS of this 2nd and 3rd place battle. So if he can't stay with Andrea Chenkovan, all he can hope for is that Kyle drops back through the pack a little bit.
Yes, that is really the only thing he can hope for, is Jack Weaver down the inside. Can he make his way through? He's just lost a little bit of momentum on the curbing, and he drops back behind Dan Riley. So the pressure that he was trying to apply has just been nullified. He's not going to be able to attack just yet. But yeah, he stays in behind in that P3 for the time being, and I think he's just going to wait for that DRS zone in order to make his way past once again. They're going to end the 4th lap of 29, and it's going to be Andrea Chenkovan who's built up that gap. It's not quite 2 seconds instead of 1.7, but yes, it is Andrea Chenkovan trying to build up that same gap he had before. It's not quite the same gap that he had before, but he's just trying to keep that one up now and keep up the momentum, because he could be heading on to take a champion's victory and a champion's drive here at Abu Dhabi. Dan Riley needs to take that P2 with the fastest lap as well in order to stay within contention of battling with Carl Stewart Woodard. If he stays in this race, they head down the DRS straight. Jack Weaver not able to stay within that DRS or within range of Dan Riley enough to make his way past, but at the moment he will just stay sitting in behind, and the battle will continue to brew as Chenkovan has gone 4/10 quicker already in these first 2 sectors, so he's really demonstrating his quality.
Yeah, Andrea Chenkovan really kicking on and getting his feet, his hands dirty, and absolutely flying at the moment. 2.3 seconds now, the gap nearly, and that's only going to grow over the next 25 laps, because you know, he's in clean air, something that in F1 25 is very, very important. Not so much in this game, but when the car's behind you in this game battling, it's much easier to build a gap than it is in F1 25. You know, I've noticed it doesn't feel like battling loses you as much time in F1 25 as it did in 24. So yeah, something fairly exclusive to this game compared to 25.
Yes, it's well, there's positives and negatives about this game, and I'm sure we can reflect on them as we head into what looks to be a more positive game cycle this time around. But yeah, at the moment, Andrea Chenkovan leading the way ahead of Dan Riley on one final dance in F1 24, and only 7 drivers, because, well, 3 of them decided that F1 25 would be a better use of their time. So if that doesn't sum up the game cycle, then I don't know what does. Carl Stewart Woodard has managed to close in on Jack Weaver for that P3 3 as Weaver's run very wide out of the chicane, and Kyle is going to try and pull alongside. He does pull to the outside line, and he's going to make his way through on Jack into 3rd place.
It's big for Kyle, and definitely not what Dan Riley would have been wanting. He would have been wanting Kyle to go backwards, not forwards. So, can Kyle now go on and catch Dan Riley? We will see.
Yes, he's going to try at least to catch up to the Kick Sauber ahead of him as it stands. Lap 6 of 29, and Andrei Chenkovan continues to lead the way 3 seconds ahead of Dan Riley, and Kyle Stewart Wood at 2.2 seconds behind Jack Weaver, going to continue to try to pressure, but he doesn't appear to have the same pace as he did earlier on. Maybe he's already on that 5th warning and already trying to prevent that 6th warning and that penalty heading his way, which would be a very, very bad way to kick off his final race, picking up 6 seconds of penalties already. And well, it's not like he can blame the understeer on this game, because in fact F1 at 25 is a lot more understeery. Kyle trying to close in, but he's not making that gap any smaller. Andrei Chenkovan is, however, making it bigger up at the very top. Dan Riley is 3 seconds behind now, and while everybody is now out of DRS, Jack Weaver making his way out of it 1.3 seconds back, and Stuart Tower in 5th place. They're just filtering through as they would be, and Stuart Tower's actually making his way into that DRS once again of Jack Weaver's proving me completely wrong. But yeah, at the moment, Jack Weaver is just trying to, well, he'll try and defend from Stuart Towers now, as his pace at the start of the race seems to have dropped off, and he's actually dropped off of P4 as Stuart Tower has retaken that position.
Yeah, I think he's really struggling with his tyres. I've been keeping an eye on him, as there you are. He heads into the pits and spins into the pits. Oh my god, I've never seen that. Wow. I was about to say he's struggling with his tyres, and the reason he lost P4 to Stuart Towers was because of a spin, and that's exactly what's just happened there, and he retires from the session.
Well, that's one of those retirements, and I'm not sure anybody will be very happy about that, least of all Dan Riley, who will just, well, he'll see that as his charge for P3 being almost completely off, because, as we mentioned at the start of the race, he had to take P2 in fastest lap, and Jack Weaver had to take Kyle Stewart Woodard had to take P7 and fastest lap, and no fastest lap point as well. It looks as though that fastest lap point is going to go to Chenkovan, and of course Kyle cannot finish last now, because last classified will be Jack Weaver. But as we head on to the next lap of this race, it's going to be still Andrei Chenkovan who's going to be the thorn in the side for a lot of people in this race, including Daniel Riley, who's going to be almost 4 seconds up the field and ahead of the Kick Sauber. So quite incredible stuff from him so far. And well, he's got to try and seal it now, but he's not had a bad start at all.
Just something to tell you. Jack Weaver is saying in the Discord his tyres were already on 50%, so whether that's down to poor tyre management or just some stupid glitch. I have known there to be weird tyre wear glitches. It has happened in league races before, so whether it's a glitch or not, I don't know, but 50% after 6 laps is absolutely mental.
It didn't feel as though, I mean, he lost the rear quite a bit, and I know that it's a slippery slope, like once you have issues once, then you're going to have issues again and again and again, it seems. But that feels quite dramatic at this point in the race. That's almost 10% a lap. For reference, the tyre wear I was moaning about at Brazil was about 7% a lap, so that is a dramatic difference, and maybe it's F1's way of giving him a teaser at the F1 25 game, even though he already has it. I'm sure he's going to be heading over to F1 25 now, as I'm sure many of these drivers will be.
By the way, Jack has offered to do an interview if we want to have a mid-race interview.
Oh, absolutely we can. Definitely. Right. Okay. Well, if you can get him into the broadcast room as this yellow flag's out, Andrea Chenkovan has spun around the final corner. Andrea Chenkovan has spun around the final corner.
That's interesting. I literally looked and started typing to Jack Weaver on my PC. I look up and see him half round. So whether he just touched the rear a little bit too much, I'm not too sure. But Andrea Chenkovan round and now rejoins him third in the race.
That could, hello, welcome in, Jack, as we'll talk to you in a minute, but that could be absolutely race, potentially championship defining if Kyle is unable to take, or if Kyle is unable to get anywhere further up. But yeah, welcome in, Jack, to the comms box. You've just come in at a time where the race leader has just spun around and bottled 2 positions, basically. But Andrea has gotten back up into second place for the time being, and Kyle is left to chase. But yeah, talk to us. Tyre wear, what's going on?
Oh, it is just so unrealistic, like, this game. Because my tyres have just gone 50% after 3 laps. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, it was ridiculous. I couldn't take a corner and I just half spin every single corner.
It did look like you were really struggling, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I got the penalty because of it as well. Because I tried to catch myself and then went off the track and got a penalty. It happened like 3 times. I just... Sorry, here you go.
No, you go.
No, I'm done now. I was going to...
Okay, that's fine. It does feel a little bit weird at this point in the game cycle, because I know that it's the end of the game cycle, but you're not the only one that struggled with that tyre where Andrea Chenkovan clearly was, because he's just come into the pit lane. But yeah, that's a very interesting glitch, I guess I'd call it. And I mean, I don't see how it could be perceived any other way. But it's a very interesting glitch to have at this point of the game cycle. We are, of course, at the end of the game cycle, but that is just a very, very odd one. Did you feel as though at the start of that stint, at least, you had the pace to keep up?
Oh yeah, I had the pace. I mean, I was pulling away from Daniel and I was keeping up with Chenkovan. So, and then all of a sudden they just went, and I just spun every corner. I just don't know what happened.
That is certain.
Like, it was just my luck at the minute. Well, hopefully next season we'll have a bit more luck.
Speaking of next season, F125, how are you feeling?
Oh, so much better. God, I've uninstalled F124 after that.
That's fair enough.
I was literally, yeah.
You're not the only one to have uninstalled F1, but I also don't think you're the only one that I've heard of that's uninstalled it literally after a race. So that's fair enough. And
I'll be doing it.
I know you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tyre wear out there, and I feel bad for everyone else because it is not good. I feel like it's especially bad when you're on controller as well, because I feel like it's harder to catch.
Yeah, speaking of being on controller, F125, notoriously difficult to get a handle on controller. How are you feeling about it?
I mean, obviously there's some tracks like Silverstone, Belgium, I'm struggling at, but other than that, I feel like I'm decently on pace.
That's fair enough.
Around the same where I was in F124.
That's fair enough. I mean, I hear issues from people on controller about this game in particular, and about how it's hard to adapt to after F1 2024. As somebody myself who was on controller, now I'm not, but as somebody who was on controller, I can't. I have no reference point because I'm on wheel now, but I know that it wasn't particularly easy to keep those tyres up while you were on controller. So it's an interesting one that we're going to have to keep an eye on. What's your, out of interest, what's the wheel rotation on? Because I've seen people go for many different things.
Wheel rotation, I don't know, I just kept it normal to be honest, wherever I was at the start.
I believe that would be 3. Is it 400?
Well, I think it's 400, yeah. I believe. It might be 360, it's around that area. I've turned mine down to 240.
Yeah, I was going to say, mine's down to 290, but that still feels a little bit too high. But yeah, everyone's got different preparations. So as we've got.
Yeah, I feel like I did a good qualifying though. I felt really good in qualifying. The laps were good, strong pace, but then just didn't have it in the race, obviously. And it got to a point where I was lap 6 and I kept spinning. I was like, yeah, now I'm done.
Well, yeah, go and enjoy F1 25. We'll leave you to it. Thank you for joining
Definitely.
us mid-race, and we'll see you for season 9.
Yeah, see if it's season 9. Bye.
Good. And during that point, in fact, Connor Stewart Woodard span around in that final sector, or I think he span. There was yellows out, and I watched Connor struggling, and he was the only one in that sector.
Damage.
So, and he's just going to the pits. It hasn't fixed the end plate damage.
Damage.
I think he may well have got the end plate damage on the exit of the pits. In fact, so that's not ideal.
If he has, then that's long day. That's really unfortunate. If he's got end plate damage on the exit of the pit lane, because that's not even small damage. That's really bad. He's knocked half his front wing off.
Well, I did. He was ghosting as he was coming out of the pit lane. And I'm going to go back in the VOD and have a look at how hard he did hit the wall. Right. I'm gonna have a look, and then I'll explain to all the viewers at home what it looks like. So Connor coming out of the pits. No, he didn't. He already had the end plate damage when he came into the pit lane, like I thought. So he's already got that damage. Clearly, they've not fixed it in the pit lane. And he was struggling on the reason he was ghosting was he was struggling to turn in on the pit exit, under the tunnel. So he's struggling from that wing damage, and it's costing him a lot of time. He's now 57 seconds behind as Dan Riley. I believe that is team orders to get past Brian Moore, and he moves up into 3rd place once again. We've had a couple of pitters early on in this race along that vein. Dan Riley and Andrew Chenkovan, who have both come into the pit lane, as well as Kyle and Connor, the two McLarens, and only Brian Moore and Stuart Tower yet to pit. And they're going pretty long on those sets of mediums. But at the same time, Chenkovan, for example, is going to have to go 3 laps more on those hards than you suggested would be the ideal laps. So for Stuart and for Brian, this may well be a good call as Stuart pulls into the pits, and I'm sure Brian may well do the same thing.
Yeah, and another thing to note, Connor's just come in again for mediums. I don't think mediums are going that distance. I don't think they're going to do 16 laps, so he's going to have to be in again. I know he had that damage, but I think I would have dragged that stint out until lap 16 when mediums would go to the end. So he's probably going to be in again, unfortunately, as Stuart now comes out in 5th place. On the best tyres on the grid, can he make use of them?
Yeah, well, that's going to be a developing situation. But yeah, Connor, I think it's just pure panic at this point from the McLaren. He's gone, they've not fixed my wing damage. And it's probably one of those things he's left Auto on. The game's decided that Auto is not the ideal tyre to be on. Auto is not enough for wing damage to have done. But yeah, that's not necessarily ideal. But yeah, that's really not ideal. But yeah, we'll see what ends up happening halfway through this race now, and Andrew Chenkovan continues to lead the way. Dan Riley is actually closer, so the overcut appears to have worked for Dan, and he's now trying to close in.
Yeah, really good pace from him so far, actually. Yeah, got the deck gap down to 2.1 seconds. So I'd be interested to see the tyre wear difference, just see sort of how much tyre wear Andrea Chenkovan got on those 2 extra laps, and see how much of a role it actually is playing in this, or if Dan Riley actually just does have that much better pace.
Yeah, I think it may well already be the tyre offset coming into play, as Brian does come into the pits 1 lap, or 2 laps longer in fact, than we even thought it would be possible, but the overcut does appear to be strong this evening at the very least. And yeah, Dan Riley going for that overcut on Andrew Chenkovan. Looks like he may well be successful at this time. So yeah, not necessarily going to be a battle on for the lead just yet, but not looking too bad from Dan, who said it was his best circuit. It's certainly looking so far.
Yeah, and he's now really close to DRS on Andrea Chenkovan. I mean, if we come towards the end of this race and Dan Riley keeps at this pace, then this race win really could be his. And I mean, all it takes then is Stuart Towers to overtake Kyle on track, and third place in the championship very well could be his.
Yeah, we will see. I mean, I really doubted Dan, in fact, about whether he was going to be able to get this race win, but he is closing on Andrea Chenkovan, as I believe the Ferrari is probably just trying to manage his tyre wear at this point. But he is closing on Andrea Chenkovan. Could Dan Riley throw the upset of the century out, upsetting not just the odds, probably Brad Gibb as well, and going on to take that race victory? Stuart Tower gets past Kyle Stewart-Woodard, and now we try and do our recalculations on what would happen if Dan wins this race. So he would get 25 points, so he would then be 12 points ahead of Kyle. So if it finished as it stands, it would go to Dan Riley because he's taken a race victory. So, well, if he gets past Andrea Chenkovan at least. So, for Dan Riley, this is an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, it is definitely, and it's one he's got to capitalise. You know, he's not far off of DRS now. You know, I think with those better tyres, he can afford to be a little bit patient. He can probably try and break away from Andrea Chenkovan if he wants on the first few laps. But if that doesn't work, then sort of settle back in, focus on managing your tyres, and then you go for that final lap is when it will really count. So it all depends here on this Stuart Towers Kyle battle for Dan Riley.
Yes, and it depends on that, and whether Chenkovan's pace in this stint is up to scratch, as it were, as the Ferrari has, I think, just spotted the kick Sauber in his rearview mirrors, and he's just tried to accelerate away a little bit. But Dan Riley, this could be absolutely vital for him, as he's 1.2 seconds back now, and well, he may well get into the DRS come the next DRS straight. Kyle Stewart-Woodard is 8 tenths behind Stuart Towers. He is slower than the Williams.
He's got end plate damage.
Has he? Kyle Stewart-Woodard's got right end plate damage, so maybe the McLaren team turned up with no right end plates, because this is the second McLaren driver now with right wing end plate damage. This is it's gone all sorts of wrong for McLaren, and it's gone all sorts of right for Dan Riley.
The gods are favouring Dan Riley right now, because look at that. He was just in DRS very briefly. Does he get DRS? No, not quite. But he will be in DRS next lap, so we could actually see Dan Riley pull it off here.
That would be something absolutely incredible if Dan Riley took this victory to take P3 in the championship. I will be perfectly honest for a second, okay? I didn't think it was going to be anywhere near possible, and I don't think I think you're lying if you say that you did think that was possible.
I didn't.
For Dan Riley to take the victory. I'm speaking to, this is an open thing to the, I believe, 5 people in our YouTube. So if you feel as though Dan Riley could have won this race, you are wrong. You never thought that in the first place. But he's he's now just dipped under a second behind. If he stays within that DRS, he is going, or if he stays within a second, he's going to get that DRS away. And he crosses the detection line. Dan Riley has made it into the DRS range of Andrea Chenkovan. He is pushing so hard for this P3 for this P3 in the championship. Kyle Stewart-Woodard's just dropped out of the DRS of Stuart Towers. I don't think the McLaren team can. I don't think they can fathom what's going on.
No, as you said, it's all going wrong for the McLaren team at the moment, and for Dan Riley, it's all going right. So it's going to be an incredible end to the race if it stays this way.
Well, we will have to just wait and see. But Dan Riley could be on to make it potentially the biggest shock in APC history. It's certainly the biggest shock since I've been here, and I thought a big shock was going to be Ethan Shackleton taking that victory in the Belgium sprint. That feels like such a long time ago now, and Dan Riley is only 8 tenths back on Andriy Chenkovan. He may well pull off an absolute shock here under the lights in Abu Dhabi as we cross the line with 10 laps to go. Dan said this was his best circuit. We believed him, but we didn't quite realise how good it was for him. And Andriy Chenkovan is suffering here. Does he have damaged the Ferrari? Because no, he doesn't. So this is just on pure pace from Dan. This is the drive of the season, potentially.
Yeah, it's been a really good drive so far. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I'm flicking between their two streams. I'm trying to see the tyre wear difference. I want to know. I won't reveal it obviously on stream, but I want to know the tyre wear difference and see how much it actually is, because it's surely got to be playing a role in this at least.
It has to be. I mean, it really does have to be. Chenkovan, it's only a few more laps, but Dan Riley has taken the lead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix here in APC, and he currently, as it stands, has taken P3 from the jaws of defeat off of Kyle Stewart-Woodard, of course. Kyle is now 2 seconds off of Stuart Towers. Chenkovan is just behind Dan Riley, so it is all yet to be decided in this race. But as it stands, Dan Riley is P3 in this championship.
Yeah, and another thing to note is Dan Riley was very happy about that on his stream. I was keeping an eye on his stream, and he was very, very happy about that. So can he start to break away now? I think if he's got the ERS2, which he hasn't actually, this would be the time to break away. Maybe take a couple of laps, recharge that battery, and then go for it.
I mean, there's neither of them are going to get the DRS off of Connor like I thought they were going to, because Connor has just pulled off to the side or had an issue, and he's pulled off away. Chenkovan now pulls alongside Dan Riley, and he may well be able to pull ahead as they head into the braking zone. Dan, though, tries to hold on around the outside, and he sweeps. He brakes so late and manages to hold on to that position. He is defending hard here in Abu Dhabi. Was it a smart decision, though, for him to defend that? Because he's just handed DRS back to Andriy Chenkovan. I don't think it was a smart decision for him to do that, as Chenkovan now tries to head around the outside. Once again, Dan tries to be the one later on the brakes, but that means the exit goes to Andriy Chenkovan, and Dan is now going to have to try and defend once again around the outside. He does defend once again. The Kick Sauber leads this one. Kyle Stewart-Woodard is now 3 seconds behind Stuart Towers, and this one may well go the way of Dan Riley. We're about to head on to lap 21. Dan is about to lead his third lap of the race and only his fourth legitimate lap of the season. The Kick Sauber could be going on to take the victory. And to be perfectly honest, as much as I want to speak to him in the post-race about how he's managed to do that, I don't think he'll have the words for us. That is, if he's able to hold on.
Okay, yeah, I've finally got a tyre wear comparison, and yes, it will be playing a factor. I'm not going to reveal the exact amounts, but it's around a 5-6% difference on the front right, which will be playing a difference. That's probably about 0.2 a lap, I reckon. So definitely playing a role here. So Andriy Chenkovan on the back foot, and also something really weird I have just noticed from watching Andriy Chenkovan's POV. His ERS button is bound to R2, which, if you don't know, R2 is the accelerator. So what button is he using to accelerate? Is he playing Mario Kart and using X or something? What on earth?
He might be left-handed, you never know, as Chenkovan gets around the outside of Dan with that DRS, moves up a position. But yeah, I mean, maybe he's just on a wheel and the bind's a wheel. I believe he's, if I remember correctly, for some reason I know that he's on a Logitech, but I may well be completely wrong, so don't quote me on that one. But yeah, Andriy Chenkovan doing Andriy Chenkovan things, trying to hold on to the lead of this race. Dan is 4/10 back. I believe that will be ERS usage from Chenkovan to try and get back ahead, as he legitimately feels now. He probably let Dan through as like an, okay, have your fun, I'll go back. Now he may well see him as a legitimate threat to his pace, and that is something that will come as a highest honour to Dan, of course. But at the same time, that is the opposite of what Dan wants, as now he's going to try to pressure right back. But with that DRS being the way it is as it stands for Dan Riley. This is a crucial point in the race. You can see Kyle Stewart Woodard in the background, 4.4 seconds off of Stewart's tower as Dan looks to the inside line. Is he going to be able to pull ahead once again? He goes later on the brakes. I believe that that's going to be the assists coming into play and helping him along his way. So assists being used to their full effect for Dan Riley, but Chenkovan back around the outside. He had that DRS in that second range and he was able to get back through. So Andrea Chenkovan leads this race once again. Dan Riley drops back down to P2, but if he's able to stay within range, I see no reason why Dan Riley cannot win this race.
Yeah, I think right now it's just about who can be smarter. Realistically, I don't think either of them is going to be able to break away from the other because they are fairly similar on pace at the moment. So it's going to be about that final lap because I don't see any other way that they can break away from each other unless something dramatic like a spin happens.
I think also you've got to consider that when Dan was able to really hold that pace to Andrea Chenkovan at the start of the stint, it was because it was the start of the stint, whereas Chenkovan was more towards the middle point of his stint. Of course, he was relatively fresh, but now that the tyre wear has sort of bedded in and the tyres are worn for both drivers, it's just all going to come down to now who is going to be who's going to be better with that management, as you say, and I think Chenkovan is going to be better at that management naturally as Dan Riley looks to close in once again. He's not going to be close enough to make his way through. Or is he going to be smart enough that he's going to be able to pull alongside and ahead in that second DRS straight? Is he learning and growing? What was that?
I was watching on board with him. He was waiting. He could have easily got past, but he was waiting for this opportunity here. Andrea Chenkovan covers off the inside. Round the outside he goes and gets it done by the looks of it. Yes, he does.
Wow, Dan Riley, he's learning and growing as he goes, and that is the sign of a true, really good racing driver. He's learning and growing as it goes on and as the race matures, and for Dan Riley at the moment, this could be an absolutely incredible victory. He and Andrea Chenkovan are going to fight it out to the absolute death in this race. There's one thing for sure, that Kyle Stewart Woodard, who Dan Riley has been fighting with throughout this season, is not going to be able to fight him tooth and nail at this very death. He's almost 6 seconds now behind Stuart Towers, as his pace in this race has not been ideal. He said coming into it that it wasn't a bad track for him, but for Dan Riley, it is certainly his best track, at least of this season, as, well, we are on now, that 24 of 29, and he is in realistic contention to win this race, which would be an absolute turn up for the books. I wonder what the odds would have been for this at the start of the race. We should introduce APC gambling. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that one as, well, as we head down to the braking zone. Once again, Chenkovan is learning and growing as he goes as well, although I think that he was going for this strategy from day dot. He wanted to just be sitting in behind Dan Riley, and he may well take this to the end of the race. On this game, unlike F125, it really benefits you just to sit in behind, and Andrea Chenkovan is just sitting in behind.
Yeah, and another factor to factor in, I'm not going to reveal who again, but one of these drivers has more warnings than the other. One of these is only one warning away from getting a penalty. And if that happens, that could change this race.
That really would change this race. And, well, I mean, that could be absolutely vital. Don't forget as well, they can get those warnings removed. Unlikely that they'll be able to get those warnings removed. But if that is Dan Riley, then he will be, you know, scrapping for every single little thing, especially if it does cost him that P3. He has been so passionately speaking about this P3 in the interviews, and he may well have something even more passionate to speak about as they head on through this race. And he is currently leading the round 14 of the APC season number 8 in the lead, but not for much longer. Andrea Chenkovan makes his way back through, and the Ferrari is up into that first place once again. So Dan Riley is he's playing his cards. Is he going to play them right? We don't know. It's like when you pull out a Uno reverse card within your first 3 goes in the game. You don't know whether it's the right call or not. You haven't had the opportunity to suss out what the other player has on offer, and well, that is something that we are going to have to wait and see throughout the course of the next few laps. We've only got 4 laps to go on this game cycle here in APC, and it's going to be a fascinating ending.
Yeah, what you were saying about removing warnings earlier, I have seen both warnings from this driver, and it's not getting removed. Neither of them are getting removed. So unless if they get a third warning, and it was a little bit dodgy, that it's probably not going to be removed. As Andrea Chenkovan actually has broken out of DRS.
Oh my goodness me, this is swapping on its head moment by moment, lap by lap, and Andrea Chenkovan has just used, I'd imagine, everything just to break free from Dan Riley. Maybe there was a mistake in there from the kick salver, but either way, that was the drivers swapping and Chenkovan holding on to it. He may well have used everything, and it's now Dan's turn to strike as he is now 6/10 back down the back straight. So he is trying to fight this one with all his might once again. And yeah, he's just sitting in behind the Ferrari at this point in time and looking to get up ahead. He's now managed to close his way back into 7/10 behind, and he's just going to try and sit in this slipstream for as long as he possibly can and get as close as he possibly can. Dirty air doesn't affect you as much as it does on F125, but he doesn't know that, as well, Connor Stewart would have looks like he may well have accidentally straight-lined the chicane, and he's just come out of the other end of it with a 10-second penalty, which won't affect his finishing position at all. We are now on 26 of 29. All of the drivers left will be classified, so at minimum, Kyle will be picking up 8 points to add to his tally. So for Dan Riley, it's absolutely crucial. Incredibly unlikely he will get fastest lap at this point in the race, and that wouldn't matter anyway at this point with Jack Weaver retiring. For Dan Riley, he needs this race win, and it's just about when he's going to be able to take the opportunity to strike. He's managed to sit within the DRS on this lap. He's 4/10 back, and he may well attack down the straight. It will make sense for Dan Riley to make his way past, or to tactically make his way past on this lap, because then he'll be through on 27. Then Chenkovan will make his way through on 28, which leaves the door open for Dan Riley to swap back on lap number 29 and the final lap. There are 6, now 5 DRS straights to go in this game cycle, and there is 5 DRS straights to go in this battle for P3. Dan Riley still chasing Andrea Chenkovan, and well, he may well look at the outside line here. No, he doesn't. He sits in behind as he didn't get the overspeed to catch up to him in the end, and yeah, Andrea Chenkovan is continuing to hold onto that race lead.
Yeah, he's got that race lead, but remember, it's still all to play for with Dan Riley in that DRS. It's going to come down to this final lap for this win. And what a way to end the season.
What a way to end the season that would be. Of course, this championship battle hasn't been the most exciting, with Andrea Chenkovan wrapping it up a round before he was supposed to last time out. But the battle for P3 has flipped and flopped all season long, and well, we thought at some point that Dan Riley had just bottled it by battling for the lead in I believe it was Singapore, where he battled for that lead and didn't
It was
end
Vegas.
up. It was. I knew it was one of the 2 night circuits. It was Vegas. I know that, but it was. I did have a hunch there, but it was Vegas where Dan Riley did try to hold on to that race lead rather immaturely, and he wasn't able to do so in the end. Now he's legitimately fighting for the race lead, and at the moment he sits in behind Chenkovan, only now 1/10 back. Chenkovan got a poor exit out of the chicane. Now it's Dan's time to strike. He pulls to that outside line of the second DRS straight, but once again doesn't make his way through, and he just sits in once again in behind as there's yellow flags out, and Kyle looks like he's had an issue and he's dropped behind Brian Moore, which won't have an effect in this championship battle, but now it may well be a case of Dan deserving this P3.
He's been into the pits. He's onto the soft tyres, which is smart, but if Dan Riley wins this race and Kyle finishes 4th with fastest lap, it's not necessarily going to do anything, because Dan Riley will still win it on countback. So let's see, as we head on to the final lap of this race, who will win it?
Now, I did notice that Kyle came into the pit lane, but figured he was just going to hold position, so it wasn't worth a mention in my opinion, as at the moment it looks to be heading the way of Chenkovan, and so therefore the way of Dan Riley. Nope, the way of Kyle Stewart Woodard, away from Dan Riley, but he will be mega impressed with his P2 finish if he's able to seal it. He is, though, only 4/10 back, and he was 8/10 back before the start of that straight, so everything is still possible. It just all comes down to this. One more DRS straight to decide a season for two different drivers that have raced this entire campaign, and Daniel Riley is not going to get close enough to Andrea Chenkovan. The final sector notoriously difficult to overtake in. Dan Riley is going to have to make his way through in a very difficult fashion in this final sector, and I don't think he's going to be able to do it, as Andrea Chenkovan looks like he's going to be the thorn in the side of the Kick Sauber's day, as that's a 3-second time penalty. I thought that was for Dan. It wasn't. It was for Connor. But for Andrea, he's going to take it home. It looked very tetchy at one point, but he's managed to seal it pretty comfortably. Andrea Chenkovan wins the final race this season and, well, crowns his championship. Dan Riley will come home in P2. Stuart Towers will, well, he'll mark his return to APC with a P3, and that is the results that we were expecting from the Williams man, rather than fighting with Connor further down at the back. Then Kyle will roll home in P4 as he, well, he's tried to get that fastest lap. We will see whether he's been able to do that and nabbed a point back, as I think he was trying to do maths on the fly and he decided that just to be safe he would come in and make the swap. But yeah, he's going to come around the final few corners now, the man in 4th place, and I think he's going to come across the line in 4th place and seal that championship P3 for himself. Around the final corner, nice and slowly and tentatively, and he's up to the line. Fastest lap of the race is what he sets, a 24.5. So whatever mental maths he did, he will be happy about that one, even though it overall means nothing. Brian Moore will come home for another haul of points in 10th, and well, in 5th, 10 points even is what I meant to say he's going to bring home. And Connor Stewart Woodard will round out our field. Jack Weaver, our only DNF. Andrea Chenkovan, our champion, and we now have a P3. It's not Dan Riley, whose heartbreak will turn to horror as he notices that not only did he miss out on that race win, he misses out on the P3 in the championship. But for Kyle, it is going to be absolute jubilation. He's been fighting for this P3 so hard this season, and it's going to feel great.
I don't know what was going on today, but on that last lap, Dan Riley got end plate damage.
Oh, well. Could that... Right. I'm gonna create a conspiracy theory here. Not a conspiracy theory, but like a wishful thinking scenario. We're gonna speak to Dan... Of course we're gonna speak to Dan Riley. About the last lap. Because if Andrea Chenkovan has caused an incident between himself and Dan, I don't know if he did, but if you could look back at the Twitch as well, that'd be great. Or the YouTube stream, even. I know Dan streams on YouTube.
I don't think he did. I was on board with it.
Oh.
I was on board. I don't think he caused an incident. I believe he just smacked the wall on the right-hand side at the exit of, you know, that right, left section in Sector 3.
Ah, you're ruining my fun, you are. But yeah, that is...
No conspiracy theory.
Nah, that's fine. I'll believe it like people believe that aliens still exist. It's not aliens, it's just AI now. But anyway, that's not a conversation to be having at this point of the race, especially of the season as well. We've rounded it out in fascinating style here in Abu Dhabi, and now we shall await those who are in for an interview, and we will speak first to Brian Moore. Good evening, Brian. How are we? All's fair in love and war, as they say in some book somewhere, probably. But yeah, that is... Well, I mean, we saw that both the McLarens had the same end plate damage, so it was an interesting one. But yeah, that was, at the end of the day, it wasn't what defined the championship, but it got very close. I mean, you say you were kind of happy to see Kyle take that P3 away. Was there a part of you that wanted Dan to win it, even though the contact, just because, you know, your teammates and your friends, you're trying to take it?
I didn't want Dan to win it. I mean, my whole idea was to try to slow Kyle down to cut him the position to Stewart for Dan to win it when I think Dan was catching Andrea, but after that contact, it kind of just swung in the way of wanting Kyle to take it because I just felt, I would have that guilty conscience that I cost him the place. So, yeah.
That's fair enough. We did some talking on the stream earlier on about F125, and Owen highlighted that you may well be struggling to adapt to the new game on controller. How are you feeling about the new season, which is coming up not that long to go? The sign-ups will open in July, so about a month away. How are you feeling about it? Of course, it may well change between now and then, but initial thoughts?
I mean, since I was talking to Owen about it the other day, I've actually got a lot more comfortable with the game, and most people are lapping slower on most tracks. Some tracks I'm actually lapping faster than F124 at, so I'm feeling a bit more confident.
Yeah, an adapted game, and I'm sure you'll get the practice in. Are you already practicing for that for the new season?
Yeah, I've already put a few hundred laps in a time trial, so yeah, I'm getting used to it.
Fair enough. Well, Brian Moore for season 9 champion. I'm already placing my bets. I put my house on it. Yeah. Well, I trust me, I haven't. not nothing against you. It's just
That's it.
on APC. You never quite know what's going to happen. But yeah. Owen, have you got any questions for Brian?
Nope.
Oh, we've gone 2 for 2 today. Well, thank you for joining us. And well,
welcome.
We'll see you next time.
Yep.
It always feels awkward when they're left in the comms box because I don't quite know whether to get rid of them or whether they want to say thank you, because then they might feel rude. He normally says thank you. Maybe he's a bit tired, or maybe he's just already on F125. Who knows? But either way, that's absolutely fine. I don't care either way. Right, next, we're gonna pull in. Ooh, I want to pull in Chenkovan next because I want to talk to Kyle and Dan separately about that battle for P3. So I'm going to pull in Andrea Chenkovan next to the box. We don't get interviews from him regularly, but when we do, it's always a pleasure. Good evening, Chenki. Thank you for joining us. And can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can. Well, interesting race there from both you and Dan. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think it was a good start, and after I think 4 laps, I got away from Jack and Daniel, and then was controlling my pace and everything, and just spent. I think it was lap 8 or 7. My rears were overheating this race, whole race. So yeah, and. Then I pitted and I gained on Daniel, I think about 3.5 seconds on the undercut. But yeah, because my rears were overheating, I think he was slowly and gradually catching me about half a second every lap. So yeah. And on penultimate lap, I think I spooked Daniel a bit because I always braked a little bit earlier in that corner, so I think he hit me and got damage. So yeah, sorry for that.
Please tell me Dan reports it, because it will be a fairy tale story if he gets that race victory. But yeah, you made a mistake, I think it's fair to say, midway through the race.
Yeah.
The lap before you came into the pits, was that just tyres overheating again?
Yeah, I think it was rears were just. I think it was something like 110 Celsius. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
my first plan was to pit that lap, but I saw that everyone was staying out, so I didn't want for safety car to happen. So yeah, and I had about, I don't think 5 seconds or something like that. Yeah. My mistake.
That's fair enough. Owen, have you got anything?
Yeah, so I was watching you and Dan Riley's point of views, and you actually had more warnings than him. You obviously got that second warning, was it, about lap sort of 18 or so? After he caught you and got into your DRS, how careful were you being to avoid getting that penalty?
I didn't know I had two. I think I had one. So yeah,
I
wasn't
checked the
very
race
sure.
director and you had 2.
Okay, but I didn't know about second one. I don't remember about second one.
Fair enough. I
Maybe
didn't
it
know if
was
you
on
leaked
the
that or not.
spin or something. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's it's. Well, that could have swung it in the other direction. It could have all swung it in the other direction. But yeah, thank you for joining us this evening, Andrea. Enjoy your championship victory, and we'll see you when sign-ups open in July.
Thank you very much. Bye.
There you go. There's a thank you. That's what I wait for. Anyway, yeah,
Nice to hear
that
it.
was it. Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll tell Brian off for his impoliteness afterwards. I'll grab him in the paddock and throttle him. Anyway, you can tell it's the end of the season, can't you? We'll speak to Dan last, I think, today. But next, I think we are going to drag in Mr. Stuart Woodard to talk us through his race. Hello, Carl. Can you hear us?
I can hear you indeed. How are we?
Perfect. We're all good. Thank you. Just talk us through that one. What was, I'd imagine, a very heart-stopping race.
I tell you what, it was a good way to end the season. I very much enjoyed that. But yeah, you know, starting in quali, like we again we tried the double slipstream, hoping that would help. But again, unfortunately, my teammate / brother messed it up and ended up blocking me instead. So I didn't end up getting that good lap in. I was so close to Jack and Dan as well that I could have had it. And then obviously we had the first start where I was about to look like I was good for P2 into the first corner. But obviously we had the connection issue. No idea what happened there. So that's all in the past. In the actual race, the one that actually happened, yeah, no, it was going well. I think I was one point in the first stint. I started to catch Dan back. I was in a bit of no man's land on my own. Started to catch Dan back because he was struggling. But I should have probably followed him in. I think I tried to go one lap longer, even though all of our tyres were dead. Somebody obviously retired for that reason. I'm not going to talk about it, but So I thought it was on. When I saw Chenky spin as well, I thought there's potential for a race win here. But I shouldn't have tried the overcut because that put me too far back. And then unfortunately, obviously, I don't know if you saw it on stream, but Brian, I believe, was trying to slow me up. Either that, who was just really slow, but he stayed out on mediums for far too long. So I feel like he was trying to slow me up for his teammate, but unfortunately, he was just too slow into the corner. He backed off into a corner, and I broke my wing. So that was kind of it from there. I kept to Stuart for a couple of laps, just kind of kept his DRS. But once he was gone, he was gone. I was on my own, and then I started to see Dan in the lead, which was a bit of a squeaky bum moment because I knew that means I needed fastest lap. So luckily, Brian was struggling so much that I could stop for fastest lap, and then obviously we coordinated with my brother to give me the DRS as well, which I don't actually think I needed in the end. I think my fastest lap was about 1.2 seconds quicker, so I would have probably got it either way. Bit weird at the end there, trying to let my brother through. Brian went a bit wide. Everyone got a bit confused, but either way, I did what I needed to do to win. We'll get the third place in the championship, even if Dan had won, which obviously is all I need to do. And I think we've even taken P2 back in the team championship if I've done the maths correctly. So we did what we needed to do. It was a good bit of teamwork in the end, and I think this is my highest ever finishing position in the championship. So we'll take those. I don't know if that's going to continue into the future. This might be the best I ever see. So we'll take it.
Well, we'll have to wait and see on that front. I've got two pieces of information for you. Piece number one is Brian was trying to hold you up. Then he felt so bad about the wing damage that he decided not to fight with you anymore. So there was that. And then you didn't actually need fastest lap to take. So essentially, because I spent a very long time trying to do the maths on this, and you're probably you're probably going to enjoy watching it back. But essentially, you need if you finished last, which obviously you couldn't do because Jack Weaver retired. If you'd finished last and Dan Riley had finished P2, if Dan had finished P2 with fastest lap, he would have won on countback. But if Dan Riley won the race, there was nothing you could have done unless you finished, like, I believe it was P4. No.
P3.
Yeah, if you finish P4, it would once again go to count back, and he would win because he's won a race. So
But if I did P4 plus fastest lap, I would have been 1 point ahead.
No, I've been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew I was right. My maths wrong here. Yeah, no, I was in P4. If he was in the lead, I needed the fastest lap to get to be 1 ahead at the end. So if he had won, I'd have still got it by 1 point.
Wow,
Yeah,
you don't hide for my math skills, I will say.
No, but you know what? It's interesting to hear about Brian. I did think that was the case. No one stays out on the mediums that long in Abu Dhabi, so it's unfortunate. And I've got one needed in the end, so I'm not gonna take it any further because I think it was quite naughty of him because he probably went to back me up, but probably overdid it because it almost felt like he braked into the corner, which no one would have expected. So it is a bit naughty, and I could probably bring it to the stewards, but I think given that it's the end of the season, I didn't end up losing out in the end because I got what I needed. We'll leave it this time. We'll all let it, we'll all let it rest. But I think he probably needs to be a little bit more careful. But I think there's no issue with people holding other people up for their teammates. Like I've done it in the previous season. I helped my teammate by holding the entire pack up. But there's a way to do it that doesn't get people damaged. So I think it's something for him to maybe take away on the off season. But yeah, I'm not going to take it any further.
Newsflash, ladies and gents. Kyle gets surprised about the fact that Brian breaks into a corner. But there we go. Owen, have you got any questions?
No, not this time.
Wonderful.
It's final race of the season. He didn't got nothing for me.
I'm almost gone perfect. There was only who was it you had a question for? It was Chenkovan you had a question for. Other than that, I'm pretty squeaky clean. Right, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And we'll see you in the next season when sign-ups are out in July even. Huh?
Yeah, hopefully we get some more drivers joining us. Yeah, get in touch, guys.
Hopefully so. Well, exactly. There you go. There's your plug. Now go back to the waiting room.
Thanks, guys.
But yes, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And now the final man to be dragged in. He's been jumped up from, normally he's last. No, normally he's first in the lineup. He was in the mid-pack the last 2 weeks. We brought him in last just to let him have a bit of a cool down, probably get himself a bit drunk on champagne. Welcome in, Dan.
Hello. Bit eventful race, I can't lie. I think I should be proud of that performance, to be fair. I didn't really expect to have the pace to go after Chenkovan. From what I know, he didn't even have any damage or whatnot, so that was pure pace for me. He just said his tyres were just gone, so it was a tough battling with him, but I think what really killed it for me was the penultimate lap where I hit the back of him and I got wing damage. To be fair, it's 100% my fault. There's not really much to say after that, but we did get P2, which is my best ever finish in the race. So we are actually, I am disappointed that maybe this race win, definite race win was took it away from me from my own actions. But it's nice to end the season well on a P2. So yeah, we're really happy with that actually.
That's fair enough. It genuinely felt at some point like you were going to win the race. Where do you think, and this is going to be potentially a harsh question, where do you think P3 was lost this season?
I think it was, I don't know. I feel like the race in Italy was that was a bad one because obviously I should have got P3 in that race and I ended up spinning and crashing on the last lap and Kyle got P3. But I'm actually going to say Brazil solely because Kyle got P3 in that race where literally shouldn't have. And I ended up getting P6. That was a race which really annoyed me and pretty much confirmed that P3 was gone, in my opinion. There was still some belief, but most of it went after the Brazil race. So I think it was Brazil, but it was. I knew it was always going to be tough when I missed a race in Saudi Arabia and Hungary. I feel like that's kind of also where I lost P3 in the championship. If I raced in both of those races, maybe I'd be P3, maybe not. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. But maybe it's a lesson for next season. Don't try not miss any races, I guess. But I am P4, which is a positive to take from it. So I was looking at P5 before this race, but now P4. So that's actually good. But definitely looking to improve next season.
Consistency is key, as they always say, and well, consistency in attendance equally is key. Owen, have you got anything for Dan before we let him go?
And consistency in nose as well.
Well, almost consistency in nose. There was one question, but other than that, there we go. And well, thank you for joining us, Dan. And well, we hope you've enjoyed this season. We'll see you next season when sign-ups open in July.
That's right. Cheers. Thank you. Bye. See you next season.
See you next season. And that's it from us for another season. And we did get another thank you. We did. That's it from us for another season. And so from us to you, anybody that participates, that runs, that stewards anything to do with APC, even just the humble lurker in the chat, we want to extend our thanks to you. From Kyle, from Owen, and from myself. We will see you for Season 9 sooner than you could imagine. Until next time, it is goodbye.
And we're underway and racing. Stay on the brakes, goodness me, what a launch! The outside of turn 1.